We live in an age of noise. Everyone is talking. Everyone is performing. Everyone wants to be seen. But the ones who are truly powerful, the ones who move the world forward, the ones who build empires and command respect, without ever demanding it, they are the quiet ones. The most successful people do not need to advertise their success. They do not need to convince you of their greatness. They do not need to dominate every conversation or flood every room with their voice. They know something deeper, something older, something wiser. They know the power of silence. This is not about passivity. It is not about hiding. It is about control. It is about strategy. It is about knowing that silence creates space, and in that space you find presence. The Stoics understood this. They lived in a world filled with politics, war, and chaos, yet they carried themselves with a calm that made others take notice. Marcus Aurelius led the Roman Empire, but his wisdom came from his silence. Seneca advised emperors, but his strength came from his stillness. Epictetus taught generations not by shouting, but by teaching men to master themselves first. This video is not about being quiet for the sake of being quiet. It is about understanding the ancient Stoic principle that silence is a form of strength. It is about showing how successful people from the ancient world to today use silence not as weakness, but as a weapon. You are going to learn why restraint earns respect, why mystery creates magnetism, and why the person who listens more than they speak often holds the most power. This is not motivational fluff. It is hard-earned wisdom carved from centuries of human experience. You will see how silence builds confidence, how it diffuses conflict, how it sharpens thought, and commands attention without a single word. You will learn how to use this forgotten discipline to rise above the noise and build a life that speaks for itself. In a world where everyone wants to go viral, you will become unforgettable by mastering the one thing no one else is using. Silence. This is Stoic wisdom at its most dangerous, at its most elegant, and at its most effective. And by the end of this video, you will not just understand why the most successful people stay silent. You will understand how to make that silence your power too. Why silence builds authority while noise destroys it. There is a reason why the loudest voice in the room is rarely the most respected. Noise may attract attention, but it does not command authority. In fact, the more someone feels the need to prove their worth, the more they reveal their insecurity. The Stoics knew this. They understood that true authority is quiet not because it lacks power, but because it does not need to advertise it. Silence is not the absence of action. It is the presence of control. When a person speaks only when necessary, when they think, before they react, when they choose their words with care, that restraint communicates more than any speech ever could. It says, I am not ruled by impulse. I am not here to impress you. I do not need your approval to act with purpose. Marcus Aurelius ruled millions, and yet he wrote privately to himself in the dead of night, asking how to remain humble and clear-headed. He never shouted for validation because he had trained himself to speak only when it served truth. His authority came not from titles, but from self-command. Compare that to today, where success is often performed rather than lived. Social media has created a culture where people equate value with volume. The more they post, the more they talk, the more they show, the more they think they are building something real. But noise is not power. It is distraction. It is insecurity in disguise. The moment you feel the need to constantly explain, defend, or prove yourself is the moment you give your power away. The Stoics warned against this. Epictetus said, if someone provokes you, be silent, not out of fear but out of strength, because nothing disarms an attacker faster than your refusal to engage. Silence builds authority because it signals that you are not reactive. And people respect what they cannot predict. When you speak less, your words gain weight. When you act without needing to announce your intentions, your movements gain mystery. And mystery is magnetism. People lean in to understand those who are not easily read. That quiet draws attention not because it seeks it, but because it refuses to chase it. Think about the most powerful people you have ever met or heard of. They do not interrupt. They do not speak over others. They do not flood you with opinion. They sit. They listen. They observe. And when they speak with clarity. That is Stoic authority. It does not rush. It does not plead. It simply exists. And because it is not loud, it forces people to pay closer attention. Silence creates contrast. In a world of noise, it becomes rare. And what is rare becomes valuable. But noise destroys that value. It cheapens your presence. It makes you predictable. The Stoics believed that the more you say, the less you are heard. That every unnecessary word is a leak in your discipline. This is not about muting your personality. It is about becoming intentional with your expression. Say only what is essential. Speak only when you have something solid to offer. And when you are silent, be fully present. Because silence without attention is just absence. But silence with attention is power. It lets others reveal themselves while you remain anchored. It allows you to study without being studied. And it gives you the space to decide rather than react. This is what builds real authority. Not louder noise, but deeper presence. Not constant updates, but timeless values. Not endless explanation, but simple action. The successful do not waste energy trying to be understood by everyone. They focus on becoming so clear within themselves that misunderstanding becomes irrelevant. And silence is the tool that sharpens that clarity. So while the world spins in reaction, you stand still in intention. While others speak to fill space, you speak to shape it. And while others crumble, when ignored, you rise in silence, because your confidence was never built on being seen. It was built on being grounded. This is why silence builds authority. And this is why noise destroys it. Because one is born from control, the other from chaos. The Stoic psychology behind saying less and doing more. The Stoics were not silent to be mysterious. They were silent because they understood something deeper about the human mind. They knew that talking too much creates the illusion of progress without the substance. That constant speech drains energy and scatters focus. And most importantly, they understood that the more a person talks about doing something, the less likely they are to actually do it. Stoic psychology teaches that the mind craves approval and attention, but real action rarely comes from those cravings. When we speak of our plans constantly, we gain the emotional reward before the real work is even done. That momentary high tricks the brain into thinking we have achieved something. But the Stoics avoided that trap. They knew that true transformation comes from doing, not declaring. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself repeatedly to be known for your actions, not your words. That was not just advice, it was a command to his own ego. Because the ego wants to be praised, the ego wants to be seen and heard. But the soul, the deeper self, it only wants to live with alignment and purpose. That is why the Stoics said less and did more. Because they were not performing life, they were living it. In modern life, we are surrounded by people talking about goals, about self-improvement, about big dreams and ambitions. But few actually follow through. Why? Because talking satisfies the surface without touching the root. The Stoics flipped this. They stayed quiet not because they lacked ambition, but because they were busy building it. Their silence was not passive. It was focused. It was directed. It was sacred. Seneca warned that life is not short if we use it well. But too many people waste their energy on endless explanation and social performance. The Stoics guarded their energy by guarding their speech. This psychological discipline allowed them to act with more clarity. It freed them from the need to convince others. It put their entire focus on what mattered. Not how they looked doing it, but whether they were living rightly and justly and fully. Epictetus taught that if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. In other words, let others talk, let others misunderstand, let others underestimate. Your duty is to live in accordance with your values, not to win temporary approval. That shift in mindset is what allowed Stoics to walk away from drama and distraction, because they knew that saying less was not about avoiding the world. It was about rising above it. Every time you choose to act instead of announce, you strengthen that part of you that is grounded and steady. Every time you resist the urge to explain yourself, you grow in quiet resilience. The Stoics understood that human psychology is shaped by repetition, and the more you repeat disciplined silence, followed by intentional action, the more your identity transforms. You no longer need people to see what you are doing. You simply need to keep doing it, and that builds confidence that no opinion can shake. Stoic silence is not cold. It is alive. It is aware. It listens deeply. It observes carefully. It waits patiently. And then it moves with precision. This is the kind of psychology that does not break under pressure, because it was never built for show. It was built for real life. The Stoics trained their minds to need less from the world and give more to it. Not with noise, but with depth. So the next time you feel the urge to tell the world what you are going to do, pause and ask yourself why. Is it to gain validation? Is it to relieve anxiety? Or is it simply to avoid the discomfort of doing the work in silence? Whatever the answer, return to what the Stoics practiced. Let your actions speak. Let your focus grow. Let your silence become the foundation of your power. Because in that silence you are not empty. You are becoming. Now you know what the wise have always known. That silence is not weakness. It is not absence. It is not fear. It is strength under control. It is power without the need to shout. The most successful people in the world are not loud because they do not have to be. Their work speaks. Their presence speaks. Their focus speaks. And behind that silence is a mind that is clear and a will that is unshakable. The Stoics understood this long before the world became addicted to noise. They practiced restraint not to hide, but to sharpen. They spoke less to observe more. They chose silence not because they lacked something to say, but because they had something to build. And now that same wisdom is available to you. You can begin today. Choose your words with purpose. Act more than you speak. Let your habits carry your message. Let your presence lead before your voice ever enters the room. In doing so, you will begin to carry yourself like the Stoics did, with a kind of silent gravity that others notice without fully understanding. And that is the point. You are not here to explain yourself to everyone. You are here to live by a higher standard. So if this message resonated with you, if something in you is ready to rise beyond the noise, subscribe and stay with us. Share this with someone who talks too much and listens too little. And remember, the strongest people in history were not always the loudest. They were the ones who walked in silence and let the world feel their presence long after they had left the room.